Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokémon Emerald video. Today I will be using a somewhat forgotten Pokémon from the second generation. Dunsparce has never been particularly famous or very powerful, but there are a few memes that make it sort of memorable. I will be using the same rules as always, so I can only use my starter in combat. I can't use items from my bag in battle, I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. Dunsparce is an interesting Pokémon. It is not very good because the stats are very average, and while the move pool is not bad, it is sort of hard to take advantage of it. In the latest generation, it also got an evolution, but again that was sort of a meme too. In my opinion, Dranpa would have been a much better evolution for this little guy. Anyway, getting back on Emerald, as usual the first few fights of the game are not particularly challenging unless you are using a very bad Pokémon. The starting moveset for Dunsparce is not very good, it only knows Rage and Defense Curl. Rage is kinda bad, it only has 20 base power, but it gets more powerful if you get attacked. It will do for the first few fights, but I'm sure it will not be as easy to deal with Roxanne with it. I attempted the first gym leader at level 16, but I couldn't even get through the first Geodude. So I leveled to 20 to have a better chance, but again I lost once. The second attempt at level 20 was the winning one, but it required a lot of luck and patience. Another option could have been to level to 24 when Dunsparce learns Pursuit, and since that move is special, it will deal a lot more damage to Roxanne's Pokémons. Instead, I was quite a bit stubborn and decided to take her down with Rage. Unfortunately, Rage is not particularly good in this fight, mostly because of the bad type matchup, but also because her Pokémons know Defense Curl too, and so they will raise their physical defense instead of raising my damage when they attack me. Because of all of that, even if I had quite a few rage boosts, the move was still dealing very little damage. Her first Geodude took forever to defeat since it was also boosting, and he even managed to get a couple of crits with his rock moves. Things were not looking so good once I defeated it. I only had like a third of HP and very few rage PPs. I knew that something like this would happen, and so I prepared for this occasion by giving Dunsparce a Leppa Berry. Thanks to that item I can recover some rage PPs, and since the second Geodude did not have as much time to set up, I can defeat it in a reasonable amount of turns. Unfortunately, Nosepass is going to be by far the biggest obstacle. It has a lot more defense than the Geodude and quite a bit more HP too. Thankfully I get a crit, and that's the only reason why I managed to defeat it, otherwise I would not have had enough PPs to take it down. Moving on, we can do the side quest in the Whismur Cave, where we have to defeat the same Team Aqua Grant as before. This time, since I have a lot more levels, the fight against him is very easy. And then, before we can leave this town, we can defeat May in the optional fight. This one was not very problematic. Sure, I still only have Rage to deal decent damage to her Pokémons, but that move after a couple of boosts, I have to admit it's not that bad. Next there should be Brawly, but since I have a very bad type matchup and not great moves, I decided to skip him for now. Instead, I went to Slateport, where we have to take down even more Team Aqua Grunts who are harassing random people. The fight against these grunts is rarely any hard. The only thing to somewhat note is that since Rage has low base power, I have to hit the Carvanas multiple times, and the rough skin damage sort of adds up a little bit. After defeating them and being forced to listen to Archie for a little while, we can resume the training around town, and then we can attempt to take down May once again. This time, her team is quite scary. Her starter has now evolved and it has a lot more stats, but the main problem is the move Double Kick. It deals a lot of damage, and even though it says that it increases rage twice, I'm not so sure about that. The damage between my attacks did not seem to change much. L'Ombre almost defeats me, but we managed to survive this encounter too. Next up we have Wattson, and usually he is a very hard fight, especially if you have nothing to deal with his Magneton. But today I can use the Defense Curl rollout strategy that always proves to be very effective. It is risky because rollout makes contact, and many of his Pokémons have the ability Static. Not to mention the multiple Thunder Waves. And if you get fully paralyzed, you have to restart the rollout. I can prevent that from happening with a berry, and we can sweep his team by rolling all over it. After this encounter, we get the Rock Smash HM, and we can use it to explore the rest of the region. Eventually we reach the Meteorfall Caves, where we are informed by Team Aqua about Max's plan to trigger the volcano to awaken the legendary Pokémon Groudon. Of course, we cannot let that happen, and we climb the volcano to challenge him to a duel. The fight against him was very annoying. I tried the rollout strategy again, but it did not work out very well, since my Tiena used multiple sand attacks on me, and that led to a lot of misses. Thief was also not really an option, since it is resisted and it does not have much power. So I ultimately had to resort to Secret Power, but because of the Intimidate, the damage with this move was also somewhat bad. I took a lot of hits and almost got defeated, but in the end I managed to come out on top on the first attempt. Now that that is dealt with too, we can resume our journey to collect badges. Our next major fight is going to be against Flannery for the Fire Badge. Her team is somewhat dangerous because of the very powerful fire moves. Fortunately, since they are fire type, it also means that they are weak to rock, and so I can once again employ the rollout strategy to sweep through her team. Next, we have to backtrack quite a bit. First to Brawly to collect his badge, since we skipped him earlier. As you might imagine, since I have a lot more levels over his Pokémons, the fight against him is not going to be any threatening. I just used Secret Power multiple times until all of his Pokémons were defeated. After dealing with him, we have to go a little bit more back, and we have to challenge our dad for the normal badge. The fight against Norman was a lot more engaging than our previous ones. His team is not too bad, it has quite a few Pokémons that are either strong or annoying. I don't have quite enough damage to one-shot them, and so they are free to attack me back. I have to be careful against slacking because of the counter strategy, and so for the first few turns I set up multiple defense curls so that even if he switched to Facade, the damage would not be too high. Then, after I wake up from the yawn, I can do the usual strategy of attacking him while he loafs around and not attacking him, or at least attacking with a special move when he can attack. That worked out pretty well, but unfortunately I got slapped just at the end. That means that Vigoroth had quite a few turns to attack me freely, but he did not manage to do that much damage to me. One thing that I neglected to mention until now, mostly because it was not very relevant, is Dunsparce's ability. Serene Grace is an extremely powerful ability that doubles the chances of the secondary effects from the moves. So, for example, Secret Power has a 30% chance to paralyze if you are in a gym fight, well, that now becomes 60%. That also works for special moves, so for example, Ice Beam has now a 20% chance to freeze my enemies. I would have really liked to get Headbutt earlier into the game, so that I could flinch most of my enemies. Unfortunately, that move is not in the level up moveset for Dunsparce, at least in this generation, so I had to deal with Rage. Anyway, the fight against May was much easier this time around. I have better moves to deal with her team, and so after a few turns we can move on to the next fight in the game. For Winona, I decided to sort of start the switch to a fully special moveset, mostly because her team does not deal very well with Thunderbolt and Ice Beam. With those two moves, you can be super effective on all of her Pokémons and one-shot them. Not going to lie, I mostly did it because I did not want to deal with Skarmory and send attacks. Once we have defeated the 6th gym in the game, we can resume our journey, and our next stop is going to be in the next town, where we have to defeat May for the last time. Today I am defeating her to put her in the video, and also because later I think I will use the move substitute. That can only be taught by an NPC on top of the mall. This encounter against May should be pretty much like the previous one, but this time she managed to use a few sand attacks on me with her starter, and that caused me to miss 6 times in a row against Pelipper. I was very frustrated after that. Overall, this fight was quite annoying because of the misses, but it was not that hard, so I guess I cannot complain too much. Moving on, we now have to go to the cemetery, where we can get the magma emblem from the lady on top, and with this key item we can enter the Team Magma secret base, where we see Maxi using the wrong orb to awaken Groudon. And since he did not use the red one, the legendary runs away, and frustrated, Maxi fights us. Once again, the fight against him proved to be kinda challenging. My physical attacks are going to deal very little damage because of Intimidate, and while the special ones are quite good, Camerupt somehow manages to survive multiple ice beams and dishes out a lot of damage to me. With a crit, I might have even lost that fight. Once we have defeated what seems to be the arch-nemesis of this run, we can go to the Team Aqua hideout, where we attempt to do the same to their admirals. At least the fight against this guy was much simpler, and with a couple of special attacks I can defeat him. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the next fight. Tate and Liza proved to be a bit more challenging than I thought. I lost once at an earlier level, even though I had a Shadow Ball. So I went around and farmed some more trainers and got a few extra levels. I got back at level 62, and even now this fight was not super easy. Shadow Ball is super effective and hits on the physical side, which means that I can somewhat ignore their calm minds, but I just barely do not have enough damage to one-shot most of their Pokémons. Fortunately, in this attempt, their Lunatone missed a Hypnosis, otherwise this would have been a defeat for sure. After spending a couple more turns attacking them and losing most of my HP, I can finally finish off their Pokémons and earn the 7th badge. Next, we have to take down the leadership of Team Magma, since they want to do something weird in the Pokémon NASA station. Surprisingly, I got defeated in this one. For whatever reason, one of their camera-ups decided to spam Earthquake every turn, and he was able to defeat 2 out of 3 of Steven's Pokémons, as well as my Dunsparce. For the second attempt, I decided to switch to an even more special moveset by teaching Calm Mind that we just got from the last gym fight. With the extra boost in special attack, Thunderbolt and Ice Beam should be able to one-shot their Pokémons, reducing greatly the chances of anything weird happening. Not by 100% though, because their camera-ups know Amnesia, and that move drastically raises their special defense, pretty much negating my special attack boost. After a little while, I managed to defeat all of the Pokémons from the first trainer, which I think is Maxi. And so, since the fight is now a 2v1, it is much simpler to win. It did get a bit risky since I got swaggered, and if I hit myself multiple times, like every turn, I could have lost. But instead, Dunsparce did not hit himself even once, and so I can finally finish off this fight too. The reward for stopping the Team Magma is the Dive HM that we have to immediately use to reach the seafloor cave. Here we find the Team Aqua Admiral Archie, and unlike Maxi, his team is quite a bit easier to deal with. Also, I finally removed my last physical attack and switched it for Substitute. That move will allow me to both ignore the stat drops and status effect moves, as well as give me enough turns to set up a few Calm Minds at the start of each fight, to then sweep the enemy team. All of that made the Archie fight very easy, and after we defeated him, the red orb activates anyway, and with both legendaries active, we have to go ask Rayquaza for help. While I do that, could you scroll down a little and leave a like, maybe a comment too? That would help out a great deal. Once Rayquaza comes down from the sky and stops the other 2 legendaries, we can get back to our badge collection and take on the last gym of the game. Juan uses water types mostly, and that is great for us. because water is special in this game, and so after a few calm minds, their attacks will deal very little damage to me and to my substitute. I took the opportunity to use Calm Mind quite a few times against his lead Latvisk, and once I was at like +4 or 5, I went on the offensive. Between Thunderbolt and Ice Beam, I should be able to deal with his Pokémons. I may not be super effective on all of his Pokémons because Kingdra and Whiscash exist, but with all of those boosts, even the evasion raising strategy is bound to fail sooner or later. And now that we have defeated all of his Pokémons, we can acquire the last badge and so use all of the HMs in the game. Thanks to that, we can get into the Victory Road, where we are immediately stopped by Wally. His team is a bit scary, mostly because my damage output is not that impressive without boost, and while I boost, he might do something weird. So once again I set up a substitute against Delcatty, since that Pokémon should be the weakest one, but also the most RNG one with assist. Anyway, this time I only set it up a couple of times since his Pokémons are not too tanky and I should be able to deal with them as is. The only thing that might survive a couple of attacks is Gardevoir, thanks to his massive special defense, but even that Pokémon fell in one attack. Once we have cleared the Victory Road, we can enter the league. Here I used a couple of rare candies just to get my level to a round number. I think level 70 should be plenty enough to deal with these guys, mostly because the substitute Calm Mind strategy is extremely powerful, and I am going to employ it in literally every fight in this place. For Sidney things go very well. His Mightyena is not able to break my substitute even with a double edge, and so I can keep it for the rest of the fight, just in case one of his Pokémons is faster than me. Ultimately, Sidney was very easy and I can defeat his team without taking any damage other than the self-inflicted from substitute. Phoebe is usually a pain because of curse from her lead Pokémon, but thankfully for us, Substitute also blocks that too. Other than that move, I don't think she has anything to deal with me, since I am immune to Shadow Punch. Because of that, I can take as much time as I want setting up, and so after spamming Calm Mind for a little while, I switched to Thunderbolt to destroy her team. With all of these special attack boosts, I'm sure nothing will be able to leave an attack. Phoebe's team is generally not the hardest one, especially since when I found out about the substitute strategy. The only possibly annoying thing is Sableye with double team, but today he played fair. Next up is Glacia and her team of ice types. This one is slightly more challenging, only because Hail deals damage to you even behind the substitute, so I will take a little bit of chip damage each turn while I am setting up. Another thing that makes this fight slightly harder is that Celio knows Body Slam. That move is physical and so it will deal decent damage to our substitute even after the Calm Minds. That means that it is somewhat likely that the substitute will break at least once while I set up, but since it takes her more than one turn to destroy it, I should be fine. After getting a bunch of attack boost, I went on the offensive, and once again Thunderbolt can carry me through this victory. Now that we are done with her too, we have to take on the last of the Elite Four. Drake is generally the hardest one of them, unless you have Ice Beam. The strategy for this guy is still the same: hide behind the substitute while Shelgon throws rock tombs at me, and in the meantime spam Calm Mind for a bunch of turns. Dunsparce is already quite slow, so one hit from Rock Tomb means that I will surely be outsped by the rest of his team, which is something I do not want to deal with if I can evade that. After the lead, he sends out Altaria and Kingdra, which I can easily take out, but then Flygon comes out and outspeeds and destroys my substitute. That is not the end of the world. I still have a bunch of HP, and since Salamence does not flinch me with Rock Slide, I can finish it off and get the victory over Drake. Finally, we reached the last challenge of our journey, and Wallace uses water types, so this fight should be somewhat easy. Wailord this time around was smart and adapted to my strategy by using Blizzard instead of Water Spout. It deals a lot of damage, and between that and Substitute, my HP is already looking not so good. To make things worse, it also spams Double Edge, which is problematic because of the previously mentioned reasons. I preferred to cut my setup short and try to defeat him as I was. Initially that strategy seems to be working, as the Tentacle goes down easily, but then Ludicolo is quite a bit more tanky because I am not super effective, and so I had to slow down and try to set up more. Fortunately, Ludicolo is not the most aggressive Pokémon in his team. He has a lot of setup moves like Double Team and Leech Seed, and I can take advantage of those free turns to set up a little bit more. Surprisingly, even with that, it was still not enough. Whiscash lived, but got frozen, but got thawed out immediately. Long story short, I had to set up a couple more times because with Amnesia, Whiscash became sort of a problem. Fortunately though, he was not able to destroy my substitute, and that is very important because his last two remaining Pokémons are boot faster than me. And sure, they did not use super dangerous moves, I would have left them even without this up, but you never know. Much like the Pokémon, the run with Dunsparce was kinda weird. I did not expect to end up with a fully special moveset, but it sort of worked out in the end. Lost a couple of times in random places, but overall the run was not that bad. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe and all of that YouTube stuff. If you have any comments with ideas or feedback, leave it down below, and I'll see you next week. Bye!